Okay, so
123.
good afternoon, everyone. A very good afternoon to all fellow members present over here. GST Corner is launching its first webinar in association with GST experts for the benefit of professionals at a large. As GST's new regime, even after 2.5 years, it has not established in proper way. There have been issues which professionals face on day-to-day basis. With regard to complexity, taxpayers have been receiving various notices with regard to section 16, subsection 4, rule 36, and so on. What are the specific points to be kept in mind while drafting a reply to a notice to the department is a thing which every professional should be look on. Apart from there have been various important judgments with respect to e-way bill, ITC, which needs a proper analysis, which can be a practical applied in our practice. Also, as you are all aware of the fact that COVID-19 has been increasing in India and government has taken several steps for taxpayers to ease and a compliance burden on them. Let's understand all such issues with a great person between us, CA Chitresh Gupta. Thanks for joining us, sir. Who has been actively working in the GST. His contribution is highly appreciable, and he is also faculty on goods and service tax by ICI in Northern Region and covering all nationwide. He is also co-author of book GST Law Analysis and Procedure. Fifth edition is already published by sir and ma'am. So we are also awaiting that the sixth edition would be start as much as sent to us. Okay. We welcome CA Chitresh Gupta to take over the seminar and share your experience with us. So we are welcoming a CA Chitresh Gupta sir. So please take a session and increase our knowledge and our participants so that everyone is good in a GST. Okay. Yes, sir. Please take it.
Yes, thanks, Dan, for the nice introduction, and very good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank GST Corner for organizing such a wonderful webinar on this hot topic. And as we all know, lockdown is going on and everybody is struggling how to pass time. But I think there are two good things about this lockdown. First is this lockdown is giving ample opportunity to us to spend time with our families, which we generally don't have for our family. The second is this lockdown is also giving us ample opportunities to brush up our knowledge and learn new things. And you can see many webinars are organized and we are fully utilizing the technology nowadays. So this is the good thing about the lockdown. So in this effort, we just organized this webinar, and the topic is practical suggestion for reply to show cause notices. Then the latest GST updates, judgments, and the third is COVID-19 GST relief measures.
So I am unable to complete yourself. Okay, sir. Please check video so that you can join the same. And as we will make available your recording.
Nayan, can you mute this thing because I am able to hear you? So now I'm starting my presentation.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sir, can you speak loudly so that some persons are coming that voice is not good to hear the audio?
I just checked my audio. Now my voice is audible to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now let us first start with my first part of my presentation, which is the practical suggestion on reply to show cause notice under GST. So friends, if you see the word show cause notice, the word show cause notice has not been defined under GST law. But you can see, although the term has not been defined under the GST law, but there are so many sections under the GST law which uses this term show cause notice. So it is very important for us to understand what is the meaning of show cause notice. So if you see, in order to adhere to the general principle of natural justice, just wait a moment. In order to adhere to the general principle of natural justice, before raising any demand, a notice has to be issued. This notice is generally referred to as show cause notice. By the show cause notice, the department asks the person chargeable with tax to show cause as to why the specified amount of tax should not be demanded from him. In a way, the issuance of show cause notice grants an opportunity to such person to defend himself before adjudication. The person to whom such notice has been issued can contest the demand by filing the reply to the show cause notice and also by appearing before the adjudicating authority personally. Meaning thereby the person to whom show cause notice has been issued need to file a reply to the show cause notice, and he can also appear before the adjudicating authority personally. Only after going through the submission, this speaking order can be passed by the authority. Now, uh, now friends, the show cause notice cannot be vague and ambiguous. There is a judgment of Supreme Court in the case of Messrs. Brindavan Beverages Private Limited, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court has observed that the show cause notice is the foundation on which the department has to build up its case. If the allegation in the show cause notice are not specific and are on the contrary vague, lack details, and unintelligible, that is sufficient to hold that notice was not given proper opportunity to meet the allegation indicated in the show cause notice. So friends, meaning thereby the show cause notice cannot be vague, it has to be very specific, and the allegation pointed out in the notice has to be very much specific. If it is vague and general, then this notice is not valid and liable to be quashed by later in the court of law. Then the another is recovery of interest without issuing show cause notice. Now friends, if department want to raise any demand and want to recover any money from the taxpayer, the department is required to issue a show cause notice. If show cause notice is not issued, then no recovery from the no recovery can be made from the taxpayer. So there is a recent judgment of the Karnataka High Court in case of LC Infra Projects Private Limited, wherein the Honorable High Court held that issuance of show cause notice is sine qua non to proceed with the recovery of interest payable under Section 50 and penalty liable under the provision of the Act. Reason meaning thereby the show cause notice is must even for the recovery of interest under Section 50 and penalty liable. Undisputedly, the interest payable under Section 50 has been determined by the authority without issuing the show cause notice, which is in this case the authority has determined the interest payable without issuing the show cause notice, which is a breach of principle of natural justice because no show cause notice was issued in that case. Now it is a settled principle of law that any order passed by quasi-judicial authorities in contravention of the principle of natural justice cannot be sustained. Thus, it is apparent that the action of the third respondent, which is the department, is perverse and illegal and same deserve to be set aside. Now, friend, as per the principle laid down by this judgment, it can be seen that if the department want to recover any money, then the department first have to issue the show cause notice to the taxpayer. There is only one exception which has been carved out in Section 75, subsection 12 of the GST law, wherein it says if the taxpayer has not paid the self-assessed tax, in that case the department can recover the amount without issue of show cause notice. But if something is determined by a department on its own and is not determined by the SSC, in that case show cause notice must be issued by the department, otherwise no recovery can be made. Now friend, let us discuss some important pointers on how to reply to the show cause notice. First is acknowledging the receipt of show cause notice. Suppose if you receive the show cause notice, first thing is you have to acknowledge the receipt of show cause notice and you have to write down the date and time when you have received that notice, and you also have to preserve the envelope by way of which you have received that notice. If you because if at a subsequent date you need to establish the date of receipt of SCN, you are in a position to substantiate. If you receive the notice physically, then also when giving the receipt of acknowledgement of SCN in the file of the officer, you should be writing the date along with the time and signature. Now another is, don't avoid receipt of SCN. Don't avoid receipt of SCN. If SCN is being served, there is no point in avoiding to receive it. It has to be received and then contested and replied. Non-receipt is sometimes considered as a service, meaning thereby if some notice is served on you, then it has to be received by you. You cannot avoid the receipt of this notice. And because sometimes non-receipt itself can be considered as service. Contemplating any SCN and feel that GST has to pay, meaning thereby in a case you are a taxpayer and some proceedings are going on and you are contemplating any SCN and you feel the issue inverse is adverse to you and you need to pay the GST, then it is advisable to pay the GST before issuance of SCN.
I cleared the
SCN. Then actually your voice comes here. I think you should mute your audio actually. So it would be advisable to pay the GST before SCN is issued. SCN cannot be issued for the amount already paid. The another pointer is to read the show cause notice thoroughly. So friend, it is very important point. Generally, we do not take it seriously. When we receive the show cause notice, we are required to read the show cause notice very carefully, line by line, in between the line, and relating the section, relating the each and every section mentioned in the notice with the law, because this helps us to understand what the allegations are made in the notice and how to prepare the reply accordingly. Now the another pointer is preliminary objection to be raised first with justifications, meaning thereby such as judiction. Suppose when you receive a notice, then there may be issue with judiction. Like in the GST law, you are aware the assessees are divided into two parts. Some are having the so basically some are having the central jurisdiction, some are having the state jurisdiction. So once you receive the notice, first of all you have to see the notice has been served by a proper jurisdiction person. The second thing is that the notice should be issued by a proper officer. If you see in lot many section under the GST law, the term proper officer has been used. And in that, for the purpose of that section, the notice should have been issued by the proper officer mentioned in that section. Now, in order to specify the proper officer, the CBIC has issued circular number 3 and circular number 31 earlier, wherein they have specified the term proper officer for the purpose of various sections. And when we receive any notice, any show cause notice, we need to see the offices, the notice is issued by a proper officer who are mentioned, who are authorized to issue notice in that particular section. If it is not issued by an officer who is in that particular section or authorized in that particular section, then the notice is not valid notice. The service of notice is time barred or suitably replied with a substantiating evidences, meaning thereby in any section in the GST law, generally the time limit is given for issuance of notice. Then in that case, the notice is issued that time limit. If notice is not issued within a time limit, then it is barred by limitation and it can be reply limitation, it can be not a notice. For example, years and 9 months from the date of filing of annual return is under section
कल उनकी कल अर्ली मॉर्निंग 3:30 के टाइम
Can you mute your
कल
voice?
सुबह क्योंकि वो
Man,
पुलिस
can
वाले
you
ना
mute
ज्यादा
your
देर तक
voice?
रोकते नहीं, मतलब वो
सैंपल बेसिस में चेक करते थे, इसके लिए मैंने क्या किया, अभी जो रिप्लाई लेटर दिया ना उसमें मैंने वही एक्नॉलेजमेंट कॉपी लगाया। अपन ने मेंशन किया था कि ड्यू टू large volume of our data we are submitting hard copy, और वो उन्होंने एक्नॉलेजमेंट करके दिया था अपने को टाइप स्टेप को ही। ये रिप्लाई में वही डाला कि अपनी
Nan, I think you keep everybody on mute mode. I think there is some issue with the with some voice was coming. Now the another point is invoking extended period of limitations. Suppose if you receive some show cause notice from the department, and in that show cause notice they have invoked the extended period of limitation. Extended period of limitation means can only be invoked under section 74 in the cases of suppression of act, misstatement, and some other fraud cases. And if there is no suppression of act, fraud or collusion or etc., then normal period of 3 years is applicable. So if the SCN is beyond 3 years, it will have to prove that there was no suppression etc. on the part of the SSE, so that the department cannot invoke the provision of 5 years. So we need to take the defense that you are not, the department cannot invoke the extended period of limitation, since our case does not fall into the prescribed cases and there is no suppression of facts. Now the another is opportunity of being heard. Whenever SCN is intended to enhance the liability of the SSC or reduce the amount of refund, an opportunity of being heard is necessary and cannot be denied by the revenue. Meaning thereby, if you receive some SCN and this SCN is going to enhance you the liability of the SSC and reduce the amount of refund, then the department is duty bound to give you the opportunity of being heard. Now the another pointer is computation of demand. At times the computation amount demanded is not available. This can also be requested to be able to reply effectively and also as a process of natural justice. Suppose a taxpayer receives a show cause notice, and in that show cause notice they just simply mention the amount of rupees so and so is payable by you on account of so and so reason. In that case, if you are not able to calculate that amount and no calculation is available, then it is the right of the SSC to ask for the computation of the demand so that you can reply to the notice effectively. Another pointer is department to adjudicate only on the issue mentioned in the SCN, meaning thereby department cannot take any other issue which is not mentioned in the SCN at a later date in the adjudication. If the department want to adjudicate on the another issue which is not mentioned in the SCN which was issued earlier, in that case the department is required to issue the fresh SCN for that additional issue, and it cannot be adjudicated in the earlier SCN. Now the another is format to reply. Now as far as format to reply, there can be two things: if the form is prescribed for reply, and the second is no form is prescribed for reply. And then can you mute? Still I am able to hear some of the participants, I believe. and there can be another the no form of is prescribed for reply. Suppose if I see the in some of the section the form for reply is specified like ASMT 11, or in case of section 73 it is DRC 06. So I need to file the reply in the specified format. But if you see the format, those are the simple one pager formats, and sometimes the issue raised in the Chopin notice are very big, and those cannot be replied in those simple format. In that case, what we need to do, we need to prepare a reply separately in a Word file, and that reply has to be point wise and sub point wise, and divided into different paragraphs, and that file can be attached as an attachment to the prescribed format. Then point wise reply I have already covered. Then reply has to be submitted within the stipulated time. Whenever generally you must have seen, whenever we receive any SCN, it has to be replied within a specified time mentioned in the notice and must be replied accordingly. Suppose if we are not able to reply the SCN within the prescribed time, then we should file one letter for seeking the adjournment. For seeking the adjournment of the time, it would be advisable to seek the extension time, and which is normally granted. Then the another is submission of reply. The reply may be submitted in person before the authority or get acknowledgement from them, or may be sent by registered post or speed post. Meaning thereby, if I want to reply reply to the authority, I can personally visit the authority and can submit the reply. And the second option can be I can send the reply by the registered post or the speed post. If it is sent by registered post or speed post, it is better to take the delivery report by tracking the same in the post office website, because in that case I will be requiring the proof of submission of reply, and unless or until I have the delivery report, I cannot justify that I have sent the reply to the proper person. And if I have uploaded the reply on the portal, then I should be noting the acknowledgement number of the reply. The another is proper reply forms a foundation for future litigation. SCN have to be properly defended and argued for this stage, build a foundation for future actions. Because if I want to give some fact, it has to be given properly at the adjudication stage itself. Because at the time of late stage, it is very difficult to give the facts. So it is the detailed SCN reply forms the basis for the future litigation and makes our case stronger in future. The another is assistance of professional. If you are not in position to represent your case personally, better hire a professional to assist you in drafting a reply to SCN and represent your case at the adjudication stage. Meaning thereby the SSC himself can represent his case and file his reply himself. But sometimes if SSC is not in a position to reply to the case properly, then in that case it is suggested that he can hire a professional to draft a proper reply. Now friends, let us come to the another slide, which is the assessment proceeding, etc., not to be valid on certain grounds. All the participants are requested not to touch the screen, because I think something is happening to the screen every time, and it is disturbing everybody. So I request the participant kindly not to touch the screen. Now let us come to the another section. Notice not to be invalid on certain grounds. So we have section 160 subsection 2, which says this service of any notice, order or communication shall not be called in question if the notice, order or communication, as the case may be, has already been acted upon by the person to whom it is issued, or where such service has not been called in question at or in the earlier proceeding commenced, continued or finalized pursuant to such notice, order or communication. Meaning thereby, as per this section, notice not to be invalid if already acted upon by the person and no issue has been raised about that notice in the earlier proceeding commenced, continued and finalized. Now friend, let us see the mode of service of notice. Notice can be served by personal delivery to the taxable person or through courier, then by registered post or speed post or courier with acknowledgement due. Then the notice can also be served by communication to his registered email address. Then notice can also be served by making it available on the common portal. And fifth, the notice can also be served by publication in newspaper. And so all of you are requested, don't touch your screen because I think something is happening on the screen every time. So you are kindly requested, please don't touch your screen. Publication in the newspaper. The sixth is, if earlier modes not practicable, affixing it in some conspicuous place at his last known place of business or residence. Meaning thereby agar earlier 5 modes of serving the notice are not feasible and not practicable, then notice can be fixed at some prominent place at his last known place of business or residence, which can be available in the RC which was issued to that person. The seventh is affixing a copy thereof on the notice board of the office of the concerned officer or authority who or which passed such decision, order or issued such summons or notice. Meaning thereby, if earlier of the modes of serving are not possible, then notice can be affixed. Show cause notice can be affixed on the notice board of the officer who has passed the notice. Now friends, if you see these boxes, the last 2 boxes are applicable only when the notice cannot be served in earlier 5 cases. And if the notice can be served in earlier 5 cases, then the department cannot resort to the last 2 cases. So before invoking the last 2,
sir, please check slide is not moving, sir.
Which is the
sir, please check slide is not moving.
My slide is moving and it is coming okay.
Okay.
Are you able to see? I am on the board of service notice slide.
Sir, a slide is on assessment proceeding not to be invalid on certain grounds, sir. Sir, please share your slide, sir. Sir, please share your screen, sir. At below of the, yes, sir.
It is coming now?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Should I repeat now?
No, sir, you can go move it, sir,
no,
please.
Now, as you see in this slide, the last 2 modes are available only when the officer cannot utilize, when the officer has exhausted the earlier 5 modes and it was not practicable to serve the notice by utilizing the earlier 5 modes. Now, friends, we have a very important judgment in this case, in the case of Kashi Bartan Bhandar, wherein the Allahabad High Court has held as under with regard to service of notice. It was held that the Assistant Commissioner could not come to any conclusion that all the previous modes as prescribed under section 69 are not practicable for the service of notice, and he has directly resorted to service by affixation. In such a situation, service, if any, by affixation cannot be regarded as proper service. Moreover, nothing on record has been brought to establish the time, date, place, and the manner in which the service by affixation was resorted to. It has been stated that the show cause notice was sent at the email address of the recipient on 18 January, but again, there is no material to support the said contention, and sending and receiving of such email has been categorically denied by the petitioner. Thus, the petitioner was not served any SCN, meaning thereby in the case of Kashi Bartan Bhandar, the Honorable Allahabad High Court had categorically held that since the notice has not been served in the earlier 5 modes, which is a personal delivery or by sending through registered post or speed post, the department cannot resort to the service by affixation. First of all, the department has to try the serving of the notice by the earlier 5 modes, and if they have not tried by serving by the earlier 5 modes, and they are not able to prove that it was not practicable to serve the notice by the earlier 5 modes, in that case the affixation will not be a valid service of notice. Now it is come. I hope my slide is visible to everybody. Now, friends, let us come to the document identification number. This is a new requirement which has been issued by the government, and recently the CBIC has issued circular regarding the generation and quoting of document identification number. Now it is mandatory generation of DIN with effect from 24 December 2019. The electronic generation quoting of document identification number shall be done in respect of all communication, including emails sent to taxpayers and other consumption by any office of the CBIC across the country. Meaning thereby now the department is sending any communication to the taxpayer, that communication should contain the document identification number, and it includes mails also. Meaning thereby, if you are receiving any SCN, any email from the department side, so in that SCN and email, first of all, we need to check it should contain the document identification number. The circular further says, if any document has been issued and which does not contain the document identification number, in that case, that document will be treated as invalid and shall be deemed to have never been issued. So friends, it is very important to check whether the document or notice or any other communication issued by the department whether contain the DIN or not. If not, then it is not a valid document. And in some time back, I was just listening to some speech of the Honorable Finance Minister Shrimati Nirmala Sitharaman, and in that speech, she has categorically mentioned that if any document is issued by a department and that document does not contain the DIN, then the taxpayer can throw that document and notice into the dustbin and does not reply to that communication. So that is the importance of the DIN, and it also serve as a validate to check the authenticity of the document. Now, in exceptional circumstances, the communication may be issued by the CBO, by the department, in which the DIN may not be mentioned, and they have specified the procedure how it can be done. So now let us see the exception. In the exceptional circumstances, communication may be issued without an auto-generated DIN only after recording the reason in writing in the concerned file. Meaning thereby, if the officer want to issue any communication without DIN, then that officer first of all have to record the reason in writing in the concerned file. Then also such communication shall be expressly state that it has been issued without a DIN. Meaning thereby, suppose if I say that officer has issued a show cause notice, then that show cause notice shall contain a statement that it has been issued without a DIN. So now friend, let us discuss what can be the exceptional circumstances where the document may be issued, communication may be issued without a DIN. When there are technical difficulty in generating the electronic DIN, or when communication regarding investigation, inquiry, verification, etc. is required to be issued at a shorter notice or in urgent situation, and the authorized officer is outside the office in discharging of his official duties. So friends, it is clear that when some communication needs to be issued in urgent basis and the authorized officer is outside the office, in that cases, the document can be issued, communication can be issued without DIN. So friends, if any communication is issued without DIN, then that communication needs to be regularized within 15 days. It is not that the department has issued any communication without DIN and that document, that communication will remain without DIN all the time. No, it is not the case. If some communication is issued without generation of DIN, then that communication has to be regularized within 15 days of sending the communication and in the prescribed manner. And the following is the procedure which has been prescribed for the regularization of the DIN. Now friend, these are the legal provisions under which notices can be issued. I just summarize the section and the subject matter. So we have section 61, 62, 63, 64 and section 74 and 73 and 74. So you can just go through in these sections the word notice and show cause notice has been used. Now friends, let us see the most commonly issued notices which are being presently issued nowadays. The first is mismatch in GSTR 2A versus ITC claimed in GSTR 3B. That is non-compliance of Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4. The another is mismatch in GSTR 1 versus GSTR 3B, meaning thereby you have reported some outward supply of suppose 1 lakh rupees in GSTR 1, while you have reported the outward supply of rupees say 20,000 in GSTR 3B. Then you may be served with a notice for explaining the difference in the figures you reported in GSTR 1 as well as GSTR 3B. And the taxpayer is required to explain in this case the difference of 80,000 rupees in the outward supply. The another is GST audit to be conducted by department. So nowadays, after filing of annual return for the financial year 17-18, now department is very proactive and they are issuing lot of notices to the assessees in order to conduct the departmental GST audit. The another type of common notice is a notice for recovery of interest on delayed payment of tax. You must be aware in the last few months, everybody must have received notice for recovery of interest on delayed payment of tax. So friends, these are the sample cases wherein we are receiving the notices. Now let us discuss the important ones. This is the sample notice which was served in one of my client case. It is a sample notice of belated filing of GSTR 3B return and interest recovery. In this case, the client, my client has filed the GSTR 3B late, and later on the department has served him the notice stating that there is a delay of so many months in filing the GSTR 3B, That's why there is a delay of this much days, and so much interest is payable by you, and you should deposit the interest. So my client just forwarded this notice to me. What I have noticed in that, first of all, this notice was not containing any DIN, which was the mandatory requirement. Second, in this notice, nowhere this has used the word show cause notice. So again, it is not a show cause notice which was prescribed under any law, under the GST law. Third, in many cases, the notice has been issued demanding the interest on the gross tax liability. Gross tax liability means the tax liability before adjustment of input tax credit. So this was the another issue. Now we'll just discuss the some pointers for the reply of this notice. So friends, first of all, to give you some background, earlier there was different opinion among the professionals whether the interest would be charged on the gross tax liability or the net tax liability after setting of input tax credit. So it was the bone of contention. Some people were saying it will be on gross, some people were saying it will be on net. And the department was also issuing the letters to the SSCs asking the interest on the gross tax liability on the basis of the judgment of the Telangana and Andhra Pradesh High Court in the case of Mega Engineering Infrastructure Limited, wherein the Honorable High Court held that the interest has to be paid on the gross liability, not net liability. So there was a lot of hue and cry in the market, and after that, one proviso was inserted in section 50 subsection 1 for calculation interest liability on net basis prospectively by the Finance number 2 Act 2019. But this proviso has not been notified till date. So the department has continued to send the notice to the taxpayers and charging the interest on gross tax liability. Then we have the judgment of another judgment came in the case of Reflex Industries Limited of the Madras High Court, wherein the Honorable High Court held that the interest should be paid on net liability and not on the gross liability, and the proviso which was inserted by Finance number 2 Act 2019 should be read retrospectively and clarificatory in nature. Now again, there was issue because the law was not amended and we were having the different judgment of the different high courts, and the SSC was into the confusion and lot many issues are arising at the taxpayer end. And ultimately the matter has been represented to the government, and in the 39th GST Council meeting, the GST Council had decided that in this case, the interest has to be paid on the net liability with retrospective effect, and they are planning to bring this amendment from 1st July 2017 that the interest should be paid on net liability and not on gross liability. But again, the law has not been amended till date, and we are waiting for the amendment of the law. Now the another question which is arising here is that there may be some SSCs who may have paid the interest on the gross interest tax liability instead of net. Now they are talking about the net. Earlier, what was happening when the SSC was being harassed and forced to pay the interest on gross liability. So friends, in my view, those person who has paid the interest on gross liability can do the recalculation on the net basis and compute the amount accordingly and file the refund application as per the applicable refund provisions. Now friends, let us come to the another type of notice, which is a sample notice of variation between ITC as per GSTR 3B and versus GSTR 2A. In lot many cases, you must have noted that various notice has been issued to the taxpayers citing there is a difference between the ITC which was claimed in GSTR 3B and GSTR 2A. So friend, it's a simple kind of notice which is being issued by the department. I think it is more of a auto-generated notice. So I think it needs to be replied in a very simple term, because if we see, the 3B contains the details of ITC, each type of each and every ITC, which are not being generally reflected in 2A. Like in GSTR 3B, we claim the ITC on imports. We also claim the ITC on reverse charge supplies. We also claim the ITC on input service distributor invoices, and we also claim some other ITC. While if I see the GSTR 2A, GSTR 2A contain the ITC with respect to domestic procurement only. So friend, there has to be a difference. And if we have the RICO between the GSTR 2A and GSTR 3B figure, we can easily justify the difference. And in that case, we just simply need to reconcile our GSTR 3B figure with the GSTR 2A figures, and suitable reply needs to be drafted and sent to the department. And if we are in the process of reconciling, and we need to find out the difference, then definitely we can take some more time for the reconciliation of GSTR 2A versus GSTR 3B figures. Now friends, broadly I have covered my first part of the presentation, which was the reply to the show notices. Now I am going to the later part of my presentation, which is the important judgments. Now friends, if you see, there is a very hue and cry in the market regarding whether GST is payable on the director remuneration. If you see, recently we have two advances on this subject. One is in the case of Alcon Consulting Engineers Private Limited. The second in case of Messrs Claycraft India Private Limited. In both the advance ruling authority has held that since the director are not the employee of the company, the remuneration paid to them would be liable to GST, and tax will be payable on the director remuneration under reverse charge mechanism. So friends, the advance ruling has taken a plea that the Schedule 3rd, Clause 1 of the CGST Act, which says that, which contain the list of the Schedule 3rd, which contain the list of the activity which shall not be treated as supply of goods nor supply of services. Clause 1 says, services provided by employee to employer shall neither be treated as supply of goods nor supply of services. So meaning thereby there has to be employer-employee relationship in order to fall that service within the ambit of clause 1. Now the advance ruling authority said, since the director is not an employee of the company, the services of director cannot fall in clause 1 of Schedule 3rd. So that's why director remuneration is not covered in the clause 1, and GST has to be paid. But friends, while deliberating on this issue, I would like to point that I have read both the advance ruling in detail, but it is very surprising to note that in both the advance ruling authority has not touched upon the question why director is not the employee of the company. They have just said director is not the employee of the company, but why director is not employee of the company, they have not touched upon that aspect. It is very interesting to note actually. Now friends, if I talk about the implication of these advance ruling, if I say these advance ruling are correct and needs to be followed, then all corporate, whether small or large, will have to pay GST under RCM on director remuneration. You can imagine each and every company which is incorporated under the Companies Act, and that company may be paying even a small amount of remuneration to the director. So even those companies, even they are not liable to registration since that aggregate turnover may be less than 20 lakh rupees. But if they are paying some managerial remuneration to the director, these companies may still have to take the compulsory registration under the GST and pay the tax under reverse charge mechanism on the director remuneration. So in my view, it is a very harsh provision, and the advance ruling given by these two advance ruling does not portray the correct legal position which should have been there. Because I think the intention of the legislature is to cover other services which are provided by the director, like maybe director sitting fees, and director is providing some professional services apart from director services to the company, or maybe the director may have provided some accommodation on rent to the company. So these kind of services may be covered under reverse charge, but covering the director remuneration per se in the advance ruling is not practicable, I believe. Now, friends, let us try to understand what this term employee means. If we see the GST law, the term employee has not been defined in the GST law. And if we go in the common parlance, then in that case, there has to be relationship of employer and employee, employer and employee. So the employer and the employer shall exercise absolute and effective control. There has to be absolute and effective control over the employee, and not only the sufficient control. Now, friends, if you see this clause was also there in earlier service tax regime, and the similar kind of entry was also there under the reverse charge mechanism. And even this service tax under reverse charge was not levied on the director remuneration in the service tax regime, while the every wording of this entry was same under the earlier regime. And I have taken some extract from the service tax regime, and in one of the circular which has been issued by CBIC, then CBEC, in the service tax regime, where it says when a director receives payment in his personal capacity, the same is liable to be taxed in the hands of director. The advance ruling, this circular was issued in respect of the nominee directors, like LIC of India, suppose appoint some nominee director on the board of some company, and the director is receiving the sitting fees as well as the director remuneration. So in this circular, they have clarified that the director remuneration received in personal capacity will not be liable to GST, while sitting fees will be liable to service tax, because it relates to service tax. The another circular which they have issued, 115, in this circular they have said remuneration paid to managing director of the company, whether whole time or independent, when being compensated for their performance as managing director or director, would not be liable to service tax. So again, the same thing they have emphasized in circular 115 also, that director remuneration is not liable to service tax. Now, friends, if I see the income tax provision also, under the income tax generally, we are taxing the director remuneration as income under the head salaries, and not as a professional income or some other income. And we are also deducting the tax under the head salaries under the TDS provision. Now, why this something, for some act we are assuming the relationship of employee under the Income Tax Act, and now this relationship changes for the purpose of GST Act. I don't think that should be the case, and it is again going to lead to a very difficult situation. So in my view, as we all know, the advance rulings are having only persuasive value and are applicable only in case of person in which case it is pronounced. It is not bounding on other assessees. So, so I think we can take some persuasive value from these advance ruling, and the government should come out with a clarification in this regard. Otherwise, it is going to create a lot of problem in future, and lot of litigation is going to happen on this point only. Reason being, it is not only the RCM, as per this ruling, not only the RCM which is applicable on the advance ruling, but also it has to be applied retrospectively, because this entry is there from the day one when GST was introduced from 1st July 2017. So it means we need to pay that GST on director remuneration from 1st July 2017, which is not at all possible. So I think this is a very absurd advance ruling, and department should clarify this position in properly, otherwise it will lead to lot of litigation. Now friend, another very important judgment is undervaluation can't be ground for the detention seizure of goods. Now friends, in this we have a very good judgment of KP Sugandh Limited versus State of Chhattisgarh High Court. So friend, in this case what happened? The vehicle was intercepted on 14 January 2020. The person in charge was carrying all the requisite document, that is e-way bill, invoice, and all the details which are required to be mentioned on the invoice, and the e-way bill was proper and the e-way bill was valid. There was no defect in the document at all. The only observation made by the authorities concerned is that the valuation does not seem to have been properly conducted, meaning thereby on the basis of invoice and e-way bill, they are just envisaging that there may be some issue in the valuation and there may appears to be a case of undervaluation. On that basis, the case, they have detained the goods and the vehicle, and the case traveled to the High Court, and the Honorable High Court held that undervaluation of goods in the invoice cannot be a ground for detention of goods and vehicle for a proceeding to be drawn under Section 129 of the CGST read with Rule 138 of the CGST Rules 2017. Meaning thereby, if their truck is caught on the road and some undervaluation issue is brought to you by the concerned officer, then in that case he cannot detain the goods under Section 129. What he can do, he can note the observation and intimate the finding of the observation to the concerned judicial officer, but he cannot detain the goods. Now friend, another important advanced ruling we have: can lift installed in a building be treated as part of plant and machinery and credit can be claimed on the lift? So there was again some confusion in this area, and again one advanced ruling has came up. So I'm just sharing you the advanced ruling. Advanced ruling of Palmas Cooperative Housing Society Limited by Authority for Advanced Ruling Maharashtra. In this case, the authority observed that the applicant plans to replace the existing lift or elevator of their society building along with its supporting structure. Sorry. Along with its supporting structures. For that purpose, the applicant enters into a contract with the supplier of lift or elevator on the basis of lump sum contract price. The contract entered with the applicant will be considered as work contract service. It was held that the erection of lift oblique elevator can be done only installing building structure as an integral part of the building in which the lift is to be installed. Meaning thereby, once the erection of lift and elevator is done in the building, it becomes an integral part of the building in which the lift is to be installed. Once the lift is installed and commissioned in the building, it becomes integral part of immovable property. Since building is immovable, so definitely the lift once installed becomes the immovable property. Now the important finding which has been given by the authority is it becomes an integral part of the building, not plant or machinery. Meaning thereby, if we see in the GST law, even if the plant or machinery is immovable, the credit is allowed fully. But if it is part of building, which is a civil structure, then credit is not available. Now in this case, they said the lift which is being attached as a part of the building, it is an integral part of the building and not plant or machinery. the lift when installed in the building makes the building fit for occupation, meaning thereby before the installation of the lift, the building was not fit for occupation and becomes a permanent fixture of the building itself. Hence, the same would be considered as immovable property and not plant and machinery, and no credit should be available on the purchase of lift. So friends, I have discussed few judgment with you. I have not many other judgment also, but I think we have a limited time in the webinar, and due to paucity of time, I am not able to discuss other judgments. Now, I am straightway moving to our third part of my presentation, which is GST relief measures for COVID-19 pandemic. So friends, if you see, the government has issued 7 notification on 3rd April 2020 in order to provide relief for the COVID-19. I have just tried to summarize the many of the observations in the in this one pages slide. So friend, I have divided the assessees or taxpayer into 3 parts for the purpose of easy understanding of the notification. The assessees who are having the aggregate turnover less than 1.5 crore, the assessee who are having the aggregate turnover between 1.5 to 5 crore, and the assessees who are having turnover more than 5 crore. So friends, if we talk about the assessees who are, so friends, if we think in totality, first of all, let me tell you, generally there is no extension of due date of filing GSTR 3B. There is no extension of due date for filing GSTR 3B. So the relief, what the relief the government has provided is only by way of waiver of late fee and waiver of interest on late payment of tax or late filing of 3B. But generally they have not extended the due date for filing GSTR 3B return. So friends, in this background, let's see, in case of assessees, taxpayers having turnover less than 5 crore. They said the late fees will not be charged if they file the return by the date mentioned in column 4. And if they also and if they file the GSTR 3B by the column mentioned in GSTR 5, that is the relief date, they would also not be liable to pay any interest on their GST payment also. So in that case, what I am trying to say, in case of taxpayer having less than 5 crore turnover, if they file the GSTR 3B before the relief date, they would not be liable to pay the late fees, and they would not be liable to pay the interest also. And if they file the return, GSTR 3B return, after the date prescribed, that is the relief date, then interest will be calculated at the rate of 18% from the regular date of filing GSTR 3B, not from the relief date, but from the regular date of filing GSTR 3B. Now friend, let us see the last case, which is for the assessees which are more than 5 crore. So in the month of February, March, April, actually again in this case also, what government said, let me give you some background. The government said, if the return is filed before 24 June, then there will be no late fees. But in case of interest, they have divided this thing into 2 parts. They said, if the GSTR 3B is filed within 15 days from the original due date of filing GSTR 3B, in that case there will not be any liability for the interest. But in case 3B is filed after the 15 days of due date of filing GSTR 3B, but before the relief date, in that case interest will be 9%. But in case GSTR 3B is filed after the relief date, that is 24 June, in that case the full interest at the rate of 18% will be payable from the original date of filing GSTR 3B. So friend, this is the position, and kindly note, in case of return for the month of May, in all the three cases, there is no waiver of late fees and there is no waiver of interest. They have just notified the date for filing the GSTR 3B for the month of May in all the three cases. So friend, you can just, this is a very comprehensive slide. You can just go through this slide later on and find out under which case your case was. Now friend, let us come to the extension in date of GSTR 1. So in case of taxpayer who are filing GSTR 1 monthly, in that case they can file the GSTR 1 up to 30th June 2020 without any late fees. And in case of taxpayer who are filing GSTR 1 quarterly, they can also file the GSTR 1 up to 30th June 2020 without any late fees. Now friends, let us take one practical example how this interest will be calculated in case of a taxpayer having aggregate turnover of more than 5 crore, because I think they are specified a very comprehensive formula and it is very confusing also. So friend, if we see the table and in the serial number 1, due date of filing is 20th April and the actual date of filing is 2nd May, and as we have seen in the last slide, the relief date is 24/06/2020. So if I say in this case the return has been filed before the relief date but after the due date, so and the delay is of 11 days only. So as we have discussed, up to the delay of 15 days there is no interest liability. So in that case the condition is fulfilled that the return has been filed within 15 days and before the relief date also. So in that case no interest will be levied. Now in the second case, the due date is again 20th April and the date of filing is 20th May, and definitely this is before the relief date, so condition for waiver of interest has been fulfilled. But the delay is of 30 days. So as we have seen in the previous slide, up to the delay of 15 days, there is no interest. But delay beyond 15 days and up to the relief date, the interest at the rate of 9% will be levied. So in the second case, there will be zero interest for the 15 days plus interest at the rate of 9% per annum for 15 days. Now friends, in the third case, the due date is 20th April and the return has been filed on 24th June and there is a delay of 65 days. And it is filed on or before the relief date. So means concession rate of interest will be applicable to me. So in this case, the total delay is 65 days. So zero interest will be there for 15 days, first 15 days, and 9% interest per annum for the balance 50 days. Now friend, let us take fourth case wherein the due date of filing 3B is 20th April and the date of filing 3B is 30th June, which is after the relief date, and the relief date was 24 June 2020, and so that's why I am not eligible for any concessional in the interest, and the total delay is 71 days. So the condition for availing the benefit of nil and concession interest rate has not been fulfilled in this case. So in this case, the interest at the rate of 18% per annum for 71 days will be levied, plus late fee will also be applicable. So friends, kindly note that the interest for entire period of 71 days will be levied, not only for the incremental days. Now friend, let us come to the relief for the composition tax. Aware that anybody who is required to opt for composition for the financial year 2021, that person is required to file an intimation is GST CMP 02 before the start of the financial year. But since there was COVID-19 and there was lot of lockdown, there may be lot of taxpayers who want to opt for the composition scheme, but were not able to opt for the composition scheme. So hence the government, in order to enable those persons to opt for composition scheme, has extended the limit for applying for the composition scheme, and intimation in respect of thereto can be filed for financial year 2021 on or before 30th June 2020 in CMP 02. So, but friends, in my view, the another important point which needs to be taken care here is that although the government has extended the date for opting for the composition up to 30th June, but in my view, you have to comply with the provision of composition with effect from 1st April 2020 itself. Meaning thereby during this period of April, May and up to 30th June, you should be complying with the composition scheme provision, otherwise you will not be eligible for the composition scheme. Although you have filed the intimation, you can file the intimation up to 30th June 2020. Statement in form GSTR ITC 03 in relation to above intimation to be filed up to 31st July 2020. So again, friends, in when you must be aware that when we opt for the composition, we need to file the detail of ITC in form GST ITC 03. And again, if I see the original date, then in that case, this form ITC 03 needs to be filed within then this form ITC 03 needs to be filed within 60 days. Now they have extended the period of that 60 days to up to 31st July 2020. Now friends, there is another is a relaxation for composition taxpayers in filing return and self-assessed statement of self-assessed tax. As we all know, the composition taxpayers are required to file the quarterly statement of self-assessed tax in GST CMP 08. Now the CBIC has extended the date for filing GST CMP 08 for the quarter ending March 2020 to 7 July 2020. And as we all know, the composition taxpayer is also required to file yearly return, and that too in GSTR 4 within 30 days from the close of the 11th financial year. Now this date has been extended to 15 July 2020. Now there is one amendment in Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4 which restricts the claim of ITC up to 10% of the eligible credit as appearing in GSTR 2A. So position before the amendment, if I talk about the position before amendment, the registered person shall be required to claim ITC to the extent of 110% of eligible ITC reflecting GSTR 2A for the tax period. The taxpayer was required to calculate the amount as per the above provision for every tax period before filing of GSTR 3B. For every tax period means for each and every tax period for which you are filing the return 3B, that is monthly, you have to calculate the eligibility of ITC as per Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4. Now, the government has given relaxation in this regard because, as you see in the previous slide, there is no correlation between filing date of GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. There may be a case. In many cases, the GSTR 1 may be filed late and you may be filing 3B earlier. So it may not be possible to follow this rule 36.4. The government understand this problem, and due to this, the government has come out with the relaxation, and they said the cumulative calculation of ITC allowed for the period of February, March, April, May, June, July, and August 2020. And therefore, for the return furnished in the said tax period, the condition of Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4 not applicable. Meaning thereby what CBIC said, for the month from February to August 2020, the taxpayer will not be required to apply Rule 36.4, that is 110% rule, and they can claim the ITC on the basis of self-assessment, in GSTR 3B, and they will be applying this rule cumulatively in the month of September 2020 and doing the adjustment in that month itself. Meaning thereby, now the Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4 will be applied cumulatively for this month in the month of September 2020 GSTR 3B. Now friends, the government has also issued some other notification for extension of time limit up to 30th June 2020. Now friends, it says for completion and compliance of any action. For completion and compliance of any action, the due date of which falls between 20th March to 20th June 2020 for the purpose of, meaning thereby any compliance or completion, the due date of which is falls between 20th March 2020 to 29th June 2020 for the purpose of, first, from the department side, completion of proceeding, passing of any order, issuance of notice, intimation, notification, sanction on approval will be treated as 30th June, meaning thereby कोई भी completion of proceeding, कोई भी passing of order, issuance of notice, intimation, जिसकी भी डेट इस पीरियड में 20 मार्च से लेकर 29 जून के बीच में फॉल करती है, वो डेट 30 जून मानी जाएगी. The another is from the taxpayer perspective, they said the filing of appeal, reply, application, furnishing of any report, document, return, statement, records, anything, the due date of which falls between 20th March to 29th June 2020, it shall be deemed as 30th June 2020. Now, you people may think is in the previous slide we have discussed various provisions regarding extension of waiver of late fees and interest and other things in GSTR 1 and 3B. Now we are saying that return filing date has also been extended to 30th June. So no friend, it is not the case. First they have covered everything in the relaxation, then they have made a carve out, and they said this thing is not applicable on these things. So these things you are seeing in this slide are the exception which are mentioned in the exception to the provision which are mentioned in the earlier slide. So first and the very important is with regard to the e-way bill, where e-way bill expires between 20th March to 15th April, the validity shall be deemed to be extended till 30th April 2020. Then the time and value supply provision will remain as it is, and there is no extension. Then GSTR 3B has been excluded because it is governed by the separate notification. But returns of TDS deductor, input service distributor, and non-resident taxable person will be governed by notification, meaning thereby in case of TDS deductor, input service distributor, non-resident taxable person whose details of return filing is filing between this period will become 30th June 2020, means they will be eligible for relief and they are not covered by the exclusion. Then registration requirement has not been deferred by way of this notification. Then lapse of composition scheme on exceeding the turnover limit. Suppose your composition, you have exceeded the turnover limit for the composition in the month of May. In that case, also the relaxation is not applicable to you. You will be governed by the normal composition provision. The provision of casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person in relation to registration will still be applicable. Then the provision relating to tax invoice will go as it is. Then GSTR 1 has been excluded since there is a separate notification giving relaxation in case of GSTR 1. Now, friend, levy of late fees has been excluded because it has been separately dealt by some other notification. Then interest on delayed payment of tax, again dealt by some other notification, that's why excluded from here. Then power to arrest, levy of partner of a firm to pay tax, penalty, detention, seizure, lease of goods and conveyance in transit. So friend, these provisions will remain applicable and there is no relaxation in case of these provisions. Now friend, recently on 9th April 2020, the government has issued one instruction regarding implementation of decision to expedite pending refund claims. Meaning thereby now the government is feeling the need because of the COVID-19, the people may be needing money and the lot of money has been stuck up in the refund. So government is planning to release the refund expeditiously so that there will be no fund issue with the taxpayers. First is all pending GST refund, including IGST refund, shall be expeditiously processed. Decision to process pending refund claims has been taken with a view to provide immediate relief to the taxpayers in these difficult times, even though the GST law provides 15 days of showing acknowledgement or deficiency memo and total 60 days for disposing of refund claim without any liability to pay interest. However, due diligence may have to be done before granting the refund on merit, considering all the relevant legal provisions and circular. Now, this is the important point. On the first hand, the government has given the instruction for expedition to fast process the refund, but at the same time, they are saying the refund should be granted on merit. Definitely, they need to be granted on merit, but it needs to be seen how the tax official think about it, how they take about it, because as we know, our experience is not good with the tax officials. The effort should be made to dispose of all the pending refund claim by 30th April 2020. Now, friend, this instruction has been issued by the CBIC. Now, again, there is a doubt that what will happen to the assessees which are under the jurisdiction of the state tax, whether this instruction will be applicable to them also, or they will keep on holding the refund and they will go as per the normal procedure. So friend, this is a food for thought. So majorly I have done with my presentation. Thanks for the patient hearing. Now I would invite the question and answers. Then now you can take the question. I have completed my presentation.
Yes, sir. My voice is audible, sir.
Yeah, it is audible to me.
So general question is related to notification number 35/2020, sir. Whether this notification covers LUT extension and refund filing, sir, which is come under this.
Yes, it will come.
It is covered under this notification, so that that is extended by 30th June, sir. Right, sir?
Yes. If you see in my screen, in the second box, it is a filing of any appeal reply application. The application may include the refund application or may include the application for filing LUT also.
Okay. So it is covered under the, please take note the participants. In my view, this LUT extension,
in my view, it can be covered.
In sir view, LUT extension and refund filing is also covered via notification number 35/2020, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it can be covered. It can be covered.
Okay. So any general question related to topics, sir, please anyone can ask via chat form at the right side corner, so that we can take up in next 5 minutes. If anyone have a specific query related to topic, please send us. Related to topic only will be entertained, sir. Sir, hello, sir. Please explain GSTR 1 due date. Certain ambiguities going in participants.
Nan, you can see the due date on my screen. First of all, I would like to say that there is no extension of due date in case of GSTR 1. The due date is same, but what government did, what CBIC did, they said if you file the GSTR 1 up to 30th June 2020, in that case, no late fees will be levied.
Okay,
so, in a say, you can say that there is no extension due date, but they have extended the due date by way of waiver of penalty.
Okay, so only the interest and late fees is there.
June. Sir, in case of GSTR 1, there is no question of interest because we are not paying any tax in case of GSTR 1. Yeah. It is a statement of outward supply.
Okay, sir.
So there is only question of late fee waiver, and this late fee has been waived up to 30th June 2020.
Okay, sir. One more question is that what is the professional tax in case of RCM on director remuneration now, sir? Different advance ruling is come, and there is a certain judgments in service tax regime also. So what
can you repeat? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sir. The question is that what professionals should take stand in case of RCM on director remuneration now, sir? Because in case if they not pay RCM, then they are not eligible to take ITC after the certain period. So if the department is going to charge RCM on director remuneration, then what would be the stand professional or taxpayer should take?
Sir, as I already said, if you see now the advance ruling has come, and the advance ruling is having a persuasive value and is applicable on the case or to the applicant on which it is given.
Okay.
So if you see, if I say, suppose if I take a view now, suppose if I take a view I am liable to pay RCM on director remuneration, in that case the another question will arise, from which date I would be liable to pay. Now I would say you are liable to pay from 1st July 2017. Now again the question will come, when I will pay from 1st July 2017, so whether ITC will be available or not. So there are so many questions which are linked to it, but in my view, this the position held by this advance ruling is not correct. This is not the intention of the law to hold the employee remuneration taxable. So in my view, the government will be coming out with a suitable clarification in this regard very soon, and they will be excluding director remuneration from the purview of reverse charge. So in my view, the current stand can be wait and watch situation for some more time.
Okay, sir. So can we take some lights from the judgments of service tax regime in this, as it also holds true now, and the Supreme Court should clarify on this matter, sir, right?
Yes, definitely, because same clause was there in service tax also, so we can take the clue from the previous law because the same clause was there.
Okay. So it would be stopped by the judgment from Supreme Court. I think so. There is no judgment by Supreme Court on this matter at present, right, sir?
Because moreover, the GST is a new law, and gradually the different issues will come, and the court will have the occasion to analyze the issues.
Okay.
Only then the judgment will come.
Okay, sir. And sir, one more question is generally I am getting from the participant is that whether the input tax credit on lift can be taken in case of mall or something else where is the some commercial building is there. There is another question.
So generally that is the issue which I was discussing in Las Palmas Cooperative Housing Society Limited. Generally, if you see section 17 subsection 5. It
Yeah.
says if you are constructing any civil structure on your own account, in
Okay.
that case you are not eligible for the input tax credit. Now the question arises, if I am constructing a mall and in that case I am installing a lift, so whether it is part of building or it is a part of plant and machinery. So definitely it is a gray area and needs to be decided by the courts in future. But as per the Las Palmas ruling, they have said the lift is a part of building, integral part of building, and not to be treated as plant and machinery. But definitely it is a gray area and will need to be tested by the decided by the courts in future.
Yeah, many questions will be answered by the courts rather than based on advanced ruling, because some uh, negative advanced ruling is come in favor of taxpayer. So
Yes,
it
yes.
has some repercussion also, sir. Like,
Sir, if,
and
as I already said, the advance ruling only have pervasive value, and generally because it is given by the departmental people, they are bound to be more biased toward department. And I don't know why people go for the advance ruling, because they already know they are going to give you the negative advance ruling only. If
yeah,
you analyze the advance ruling, most of the advance ruling are against the assessing only.
assess only, right, sir. Sir, one more question is generally asking by the participant is that key whether the GSTR 3B is filed on 25 June, then late fees will be applicable from the original from the due date to till relief date, or
Original
it
date.
could be original date. So late fees will be applicable from the original due date to the date of filing, right, sir?
Yes, you can see on my screen it is a serial number 4. I have
Okay.
shared my screen. You can see the example at serial number 4. In this, the date of filing was 20th April and the date of filing was 30th June, while
38
the
June.
relief date was 24th
Okay.
and the delay was 71 days. So in that case, I have written interest will be calculated at the rate of 18% for 71 days. So basically what I'm trying to say here that relief date is generally is one of the condition for the concession rate of interest. If you have not filed the GSTR 3B, it means you have not complied with the condition. When you have not complied with the condition, the interest will be applicable from the original due date.
Okay. So one more question is there. As the director is providing some services in their professional capacity, or some services in individual capacity, that like renting of building and etc. So what would be the
Yeah.
implication of this advanced ruling in transaction base? As the sitting fees is RCM is applicable on it, and I think so
Yes,
that,
yes.
and in case of
Sir,
renting of immovable property, what would be the situation?
sir, first of all, if we are paying something
Okay.
as a consideration of services rendered by employee,
Okay.
then that service is outside the scope of GST and no GST is payable. Meaning thereby, if I can establish the relationship of employer and employee,
Okay.
and whatever amount I am paying is for the services which director has rendered as an employee,
Okay.
in that case, GST is not applicable. But if the director is providing some other services like director sitting fees, GST is applicable in under reverse charge. If director is giving some immovable property on rent to the company, then definitely director is providing some other services and which is apart from employer-employee relationship. Then in that case also the RCM will be applicable.
Okay. So,
And
any
it
more?
is under the compulsory reverse charge.
It is under the
Then
compulsory
it is
reverse
covered
charge.
compulsory reverse charge section 9 subsection 3.
Will be applicable. Is there any more question related to the topic, so that we can cover the same in next 2 minutes? So, only the related to the topic will be entertained by the speaker and the host. So that please ask related to only a topic related query and say webinar related query. So no question otherwise. Sir, a general query is there. Under which section of GST Act assessee has the power to ask computation from department? It is available under GST Act or it falls under principle of natural justice?
Which computation? The computation of the amount which has been stated in the show cause notice.
Yeah, sir.
It is a principle of natural justice. If I am getting some notice and they have mentioned something, and if I am not able to understand the calculation and the meaning thereof, then how the government would expect me to reply? If first of all they have to provide me the calculation, only if I have the calculation I can understand what is the allegation, what are the issues involved. Only then I can reply effectively. So it has to be given as per the principle of natural justice.
Yes, sir. Sir, is there any judgment of Supreme Court where director are treated as an employee of the company?
Then I need to check on this.
Okay. So we need to let it. Okay, sir.
But I would like to say this, that earlier, if you see, in service tax also we discussed the same type of provision was there under RCM. But you can see under service tax also no company was paying reverse charge on director remuneration under service tax regime, meaning thereby there was some exclusion. So I think that same thing should come in the GST law also, because same provision has been borrowed from the service tax law.
Yeah. But sir, if RCM is applicable in case of, suppose, let's say financial year 17-18, then the due date of ITC taken is also limited by 31st March 2019. Yes. So it would be a very great much loss to the company in that case.
That's what I am saying. That's what I am saying, because it has a huge repercussion. Okay. Yeah, think of a case which I was discussing. Suppose you are a company.
Yeah.
You are a company and you are migrated into GST regime on 1st July 2017. Okay. And you are having turnover less than 20 lakh rupees. Since you are having turnover less than 20 lakh rupees and you are not making any interstate supplies, you have not taken any registration under GST.
Yeah.
But this company is paying director remuneration.
Yes, sir. So it would be.
You say that director remuneration is under compulsory reverse charge. So it means that person needs to take the registration from 1st July and pay the tax under reverse charge on director remuneration.
Yeah. The repercussion is very heavy on the company sides.
Yeah.
So need to take a call from the company now what would be done by them. So today's seminar can we conclude, sir, so that we can move forward in the next minute, so that I can provide. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we are concluding the seminar. Respected Chitresh sir and all the participants, it's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this event. I would like to extend a special thanks to Mr. Chitresh sir for inspiring us and enlightening in the GST to us and our all participants nationwide. And I especially like Mr. Chitresh sir's speech, where he covered a nicely coverage of judgments and the latest instruction given by the CBIC via instruction number 1 on 9th April. And the way he explained their topic is exemplary. As no program can be successful with a single person. So I extend my big thanks to Mr. Chitresh sir and all participants and all our GST Corner volunteers too. Thank you everyone for making this first event in association with the GST experts, Mr. Chitresh sir and their other team members, and for their valuable support and contribution. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to Mr. Chitresh sir. So I am going to end all this, and hopefully the GST Corner will organize upcoming webinar in a series way, so that all participants and all professionals nationwide can get benefited from Chitresh sir and all other speakers and from GST Corners. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, patient hearing.
Thank you everyone.